there was so much more to do. So much. Life was busier. Life was more diverse. Life was more exciting, at least for me. There are like Catholic high schools down the peninsula, but there was never a question for me that I wasn't going to come to SH or to another school in the city.
That was Matt Sterling. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. In this podcast, Matt traces his family line back to his maternal great-grandparents, who immigrated from Ireland to San Francisco. His grandma on his mom's side had 7 kids and raised them in Ingleside, where Matt's family still has a sizable presence. Matt's parents met when both of them worked for the San Francisco Police Department. His dad had 3 kids from a previous marriage, and so when Matt and his younger sister were born, the family moved to the peninsula to accommodate that growth. But Matt always had his eyes set on returning to the city, where so many of his familial roots lie. Check back Thursday for part 2 and the continuation of Matt Sterling's life story. Here's Matt.
My maternal grandmother was born and raised in San Francisco. Her mother, my maternal great-grandmother, came from Ireland. So that would have been the first entry of any of my family to San Francisco.
Did she come with her husband?
She did come with her husband. Yes, okay. She came with her husband. I know very little about that much, but I do know that my maternal grandmother was born and raised in San Francisco. Kind of like a standard Irish Catholic, like Sunset, Ingleside area family. They had 7 children, including my mom.
Okay.
And all of those children had many children of their own. So I grew up in a unique scenario in which I had 23 first cousins.
Okay. Do you know them all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Oh, yes, I know them all.
Okay.
I know them all. There's only one of my aunts and uncles that left California. They live in upstate New York now with my 2 cousins, but predominantly the majority of all of us are still here. I'm seeing them all tomorrow at, this is like the fun part about having family that's still in the city is one of my cousin's kids is playing another one of my cousin's kids in a high school football game at Kezar Stadium tomorrow night. So like a whole crew of us are going out.
Now see, that's where I will forgive the split, like the hats. If it's Giants A's, I'm like, stop that. But
right.
if this is family and
this
it's
is just
like,
local high school,
yeah.
But
by all means.
The great part is that they're playing each other, and these 2 boys grew up together too. So
yeah.
A bunch of us are meeting at the Kezar pub tomorrow, and I'll get to see a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles. But yeah,
is this a first? Having cousins play each other?
Yes, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
As far as I know.
Okay. And these are your cousins' kids?
These are my cousins'
So
kids.
this is the next generation.
It's the next generation. It is indeed the next generation. Who are all like graduating high school and whatnot, so they're on their ways.
And so because it's your mother's side, they're not all Sterlings.
No.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
They are not. My father came here from the Philippines when he was 22 on his own.
Okay.
So I am much less connected to my father's side of the family for a lot of reasons, but my dad came here from the Philippines on his own.
Is he Filipino?
He is.
Okay.
And he met my mother while they both were working for the SFPD.
Oh.
And so my dad was an officer and for 30 plus years, and my mother worked in administration downtown at the Hall of Justice.
Wow.
And my parents met there, and then I came along.
Yeah.
So, like a year later.
Yeah. Do you know what it was that brought your dad here?
A better life.
Yeah.
A better life for himself. He had a rather rocky and difficult upbringing, and so he came here truly on his own to just like make a better life for himself, which he most certainly did.
And then did he bring your half siblings over later?
No, they were all born here.
Oh, they were born. Mm-hmm. He came
had
on
a
family.
Own. Yeah,
and
he got married. He had my 3 older siblings, and he and his wife divorced, and then he met my mom. My mom and my dad got married with my 3 older siblings in tow, and then a few years later, along came my sister and I.
Yeah. I have so many questions.
There's a lot. Well, yeah, I still have so many questions, but yeah.
Well, let's go back to your maternal grandmother. Sure. Do you know? You mentioned Ingleside. Like, did the family that she eventually had? You said she had 7 children, including your mom.
Children, including my mom. Yeah.
Did they all grow up out in that neighborhood?
They all grew up just a stone's throw from Stonestown Galleria Mall.
Nice pun.
Yeah. Near Ocean Avenue, that whole area.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then, so through your aunts, uncles, and your mom, do they talk about the neighborhood back when they were growing up? I'm guessing it was like, if I can just get,
sure.
60s?
It was, my mother was born in 1950.
Okay, so she came of age in the late 50s,
yes.
and then the 60s.
And 60s, yeah.
And I don't know where does she fall in her group of siblings?
She is number 5 of 7.
Okay, so she's on the younger side.
She's the 5th of 7, correct.
So some of them like grew up firmly in the 50s. So like
yes.
full on baby boom.
Yes, I believe my oldest aunt is 80.
Okay,
if I'm correct. My apologies.
No worries.
If she hears this, and I'm correct.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But so does your mom and or any of your aunts and uncles, do they ever talk about or give you an idea of what the neighborhood was like?
Just seemed like a lot of fun and pretty rambunctious. You know, they were like I said, there were 7 of them, and it kind of sounds like they just sort of like ran the neighborhood.
Awesome.
You know, like just a bunch of kids who varied in age, and it really does seem like the kind of, even though there was no picket fence, like it seems like that kind of old-fashioned, you know, kids are just playing all day long and getting home in time for dinner, and, you know, you see all kinds of kids out in the neighborhood and on the street and on the sidewalks, and
like probably didn't lock their doors.
Certainly didn't lock their doors, and
yeah,
we're just like cruising around with the city as their playground. In a sort of, again, everything's different in like retrospect, especially if you didn't experience it, but it seems like, you know, a very happy, idyllic type of scenario.
Nothing ever went wrong. They didn't get it.
Nothing ever went wrong. Never. They wore like, you know, plaid.
Oh yeah, they were Rockwell paintings.
Yeah, indeed.
They really were. Was there ever, or is there now, a black sheep, or did they all pretty much get along?
Oh,
always?
They all got along for the most part. Yeah, into adulthood, and are still very, very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great because that's what I grew up with. So I grew up going to Thanksgiving. Our Thanksgivings, because, like I said, because of the pandemic and also because of a recent illness in the family, we have not been able to have our normal Thanksgivings. But what started at my grandmother's house and has now gone to my parents' house are Thanksgivings where anywhere from like 50 to 60 people every year. And people arrive around 5. We don't eat until like anywhere between 9 and 10 because it's just everyone just drinking and socializing and like hanging out. And
please tell me there's a team of people cooking.
Everyone contributes. Everyone contributes, but it's like a 3 turkey situation with a lot of other food, and I mean, when you're talking about San Francisco, that really is like my fondest memories of growing up. That's the most vivid and the richest part of my childhood and adolescence is every year going to Thanksgivings or various family parties. Like there were so many of us that I was going to weddings and events like that my whole life.
Were the dinners always at homes or ever at banquet halls?
Like weddings, at homes. Of course. I mean, we packed my grandmother's house and put tables in places where tables didn't belong. And then always there's like the kids in the basement. The kids are always just in the basement, like running amok.
Lock the doors.
Yeah, running amok and hanging out in the backyard.
Right. Is your grandmother's house still in the family?
It is not still in the family. However, only one of those 7 one of my uncles has passed, but the rest are still with us. And his house and my aunt who still lives there and the house that my cousins grew up in is right next door. And that's still in the family. The house across the street is still in the family with another cousin of ours. And down the street my aunt and uncle still live with a few of my cousins still now. So
That's amazing.
they really didn't go far.
Yeah.
Some of them.
There's the one you said that lives in upstate New York.
Correct.
Okay, and they're still there.
They're still there. Yeah, they're presently here because it's about to be Thanksgiving.
Time.
Yeah. But,
as we record this.
yes.
I'm just trying to that tradition, or the traditions you're speaking of, but starting with Thanksgiving, those must have predated your time.
Oh, for sure.
Did they they probably started with your grandmother's family and the
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it. The nice part about my mother's side of the family is that they really are like a picture of like a tight family unit. Even though there's many of them, like you were asking about black sheep or whatnot, they really grew up with a very important, like, family is everything, and family is the most important thing if you have it, you know. And once, as you age, like, friends come and go, but your siblings and your family are the unit that you need to keep together at all costs if possible.
Right.
And so they grew up that way, and in turn I grew up that way as well. So the point of that is they grew up obviously celebrating all holidays together, and then as the kids got married and had kids, they made sure that that was the one holiday every year that everyone was together. And then as they had kids and their kids had kids and whatnot, it grew to like 50 plus people.
And I wonder if your grandmother or grandfather were ever like, oh God, what did we do?
That was truly my grandmother's favorite day of the year,
Right.
because she could just really hold court and
Yeah.
just watch generations of her family and offspring
Yeah.
so happy to
Yeah.
be. So that's why we still to this day, and maybe some of the in-laws of my cousins don't love it so much because they'd rather eat Thanksgiving dinner before 9:30 at night.
Right.
But that is still continues today. And it's my
Yeah.
mother's favorite day because she can just look around the house, and it's the one holiday we've split off for Christmases and other things and whatnot, but that's the one day of the year that the whole family knows that that's where we are going to be and that's where we want to be.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say the whole eating late thing just speaks to, it might speak to the alcohol, but it just speaks to how much like you all kind of dig each other.
And talking.
Because I think I'm not alone. Like there's what Thanksgiving stands for, which is total bullshit. But just being with people, that's what I dig. And the food. Like you can't ignore how awesome the food is.
Sure.
But if you're hanging out with all of your family and you're just like, oh God, we've been having fun and we forgot to eat.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
Is like we always get the looks, the side eyes from the few people that are like, I need to get some food in my belly.
There is the whole
And then
drinking
we
and
like,
getting
oh,
here.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. We're here to eat, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't sort of skip over or ignore the fact you said your parents were both working for SFPD when
Correct,
they
yeah.
met. Do you know, like, or do you want to share how much of your mom's story or your dad's story that you know leading up to them being like, I'm going to work for the cops?
I don't. I know that my dad came and he had worked when he came here and then had his children, and then for the most part was a single parent after he and his wife divorced. He was looking for a stable job that he could support. He had worked previously like many jobs around the clock, which is hard to do post-divorce when you also need to be there to parent like three young children.
Yeah.
And so that was, at the time for him, a stable career with good benefits, with, a stable, solid career in which he was serving the community and was able to go to work and come home to his children without having to work 3 jobs around the clock. Mm-hmm. And it was a way for him to provide a stable upbringing for his children.
Decent pension.
And a decent pension, great health care, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he, and forgive me because you mentioned what he did for the SFPD, but I'm forgetting. What was his...
He was an officer.
Like a beat officer.
Yeah, he was a sergeant until he retired.
Okay.
Yeah, and my mom, I think, found her way there because it wasn't just, they met there, but on my dad met my mom there, but on my mom's side, there are 2 of her brothers were officers, so I think that she sort of like followed into their footsteps. So it's interesting because before my dad and my mom even got together, he knew a couple of my uncles just from
Right.
Being on the force together.
Right.
Yeah.
So did he have a beat? Was it the
he
neighborhood?
bounced.
Or?
He was in the force for roughly 30. I think he retired after 34 years.
Wow.
So he bounced from many different districts.
Mm-hmm.
So even as I grew up, sometimes I would get off of school in high school and like go take the Muni over to Terraville Station to go like see my dad as he was getting off work or to say hello, or out to Ingleside. He made his way. When he and my mom met, he was at, I think it's Northern, whichever station is in North Beach, like right the border between North Beach and Chinatown.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where he and my mom really met and courted, was when they both were working around that area.
Okay, got it.
But he served all over the city.
And then a question that I just remembered that is totally out of order, but what was your mom's family name? Like, what are her
Hallisey. Hallisey.
Hallisey.
Hallisy. Hallisey.
Hallisey. Okay, is that Irish?
I think so.
Let's say it is, because you said they're Irish.
As far as I know, yeah.
I've never heard that name, so. But okay, so they were.
If
the
you dug a little
Hallisey
deeper,
family.
there's a lot of us around the city still.
Oh.
Yeah,
We did
and
say
they keep
Irish.
coming. Yeah.
So how much of your parents' courting story, besides where, do you know?
Not much.
Okay.
I don't know much, other than my mom saying. I mean, my mom always tells me that. Her brothers were there, and she wasn't really sure about my dad so much.
That's how
he
the
can
best
be
ones start.
Right.
Yeah.
He can be kind of a quiet person, not super forthcoming initially, but especially during that time when he was really like putting his head down and working to support his family. And so she was like, I'm not really sure about him. I believe, if I'm correct, she said she thought he was kind of a jerk at first.
Oh.
I don't know that portion much of their courting.
And he has 3 little ones.
Well, and then my dad says, anytime I've ever been hard on my mom, he's like, you need to remember that your mom married a Filipino guy with 3 children.
Totally.
Who was divorced, and she comes from like a big Irish Catholic family in which there really is no divorce. And all of these. So your mom deserves a lot of credit for taking all of that on.
Right.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
So let's roughly, when did they meet and start dating?
That would be the early 80s.
Okay.
I was born in 84.
Right.
They married in 83.
Okay.
And dated for a few years before that, so it was just the beginning of the 80s.
Okay. And then where did they live, I guess, when you were born?
When I was born, they lived where they still live, in South San Francisco, in South City.
Okay. Is that a house that kind of, what's the story of that house? Because now we're out of Ingleside, where your family was so rooted. What's that story?
Oh, that story is that my dad wanted to buy like a nice house that fit everyone. That even at that time was like more affordable than a house in the city.
Right.
Even though it's just a couple exits out of the freeway. So yeah, he just looked around and found somewhere that made sense for a family of his size that he already had, with the intent to grow that even more.
Okay. So we'll skip over your actual birth.
Sure.
I'm assuming you
It
don't
did
remember
happen.
it. Yes, I'm gonna. You can fact check that.
Right.
It did happen.
Yeah, it did happen.
But do you want to share some of your earliest memories? I don't care if they were in Daly City or South San Francisco.
My earliest memories really don't. Well, my memories of growing up are limited in South City because my family everyone else was pretty much in the same area of San Francisco. We were always coming just into the city often, and I grew up going to that's another thing we talked about earlier. I grew up going to football games at Kezar Stadium, where I will be again tomorrow, watching a whole new generation of family, which is fun. But yeah, I just kind of did the normal. I went to St. Veronica in South San Francisco, grew up there. And Catholic school, yeah, Catholic school in San Francisco. And then the natural track from there was one of the Catholic schools here in the city, which I chose Sacred Heart, SHCP, Sacred Heart Cathedral Prep, which is where, especially my San Francisco life, really blossomed.
Okay.
Because that's where I really got to explore the city much more. All of my friends lived closer to the school, or at least closer to like, the general mid-city area.
Right.
I was on the cross-country team, so I ran. Not discovered, but I really got to know the city much better.
You ran around the city.
I ran around the city. We would have to like get bused or take Muni out to Golden Gate Park or other areas to run unobstructed, because if we started practice at school, we were a cross-country team practicing distance running, and we would go like stoplight, stoplight, stoplight. But
Jogging place is not the same.
Jogging place is not the same at all. City hills are, with stoplights, are a different story. But I would run at length through Golden Gate Park, which I still love to do today. That's a memory and a practice that I still have today. And like along Land's End with these beautiful sweeping views of the Golden Gate Bridge and the bay. That's really how I got to really, really know the city well.
Can we go back just a little bit? Because
I jump all over the place. So
you run and jump.
Nice.
So I'm guessing that for a little kid, like sometimes I think it shouldn't matter to adults either, but like you're in a house growing up in South San Francisco, but a lot of your family is in, and it's like you said, it's very close geographically.
Right.
Did you even know?
No, there was no real like difference to me.
It's just I'm going to XYZ's house, which is over there.
It really was no difference to me, at least.
What about other things from your childhood, perhaps before high school? 49ers games, Giants games.
Right.
You're too young for Playland, but like the Embarcadero, the ferry building. What other kinds of memories?
I will say that the difference really was that life in the city was much more vibrant. So whereas, in South City, we would just go to the movie theater, which was down by like the Tanforan Mall in San Bruno, and just kind of like walk, really like my memories of growing up and my life growing up, at least in elementary school in South City, consisted of going to the mall, whether it was Seremani or Tanforan, going to the movies, going to the mall, and going to like sleepovers in my friends' houses.
And despite our age and geographic differences of growing up, same.
Yeah.
Totally.
But then during high school is when, everything changes. That's where, or when you come into the city to go to a Niners game or a Giants game at Candlestick Park back then.
Which you did.
Which I did, yeah.
A lot?
Enough that I remember it.
Yeah.
Enough that I remember Candlestick Park, like, pretty well.
Okay.
And there was so much more to do. So much. Life was busier. Life was more diverse. Life was more exciting, at least for me. There are like Catholic high schools down the peninsula, but there was never a question for me that I wasn't going to come to SH or to another school in the city.
Awesome.
It even though it's so close geographically, it still feels like I can only imagine like someone coming into the big city in college or something,
right? And
like life opening up for them in new and different ways.
We're sitting here recording, and we're on California Street, and a cable car just went by. And so, first of all, thank you, gods, or whatever's. She did it.
Iconic.
But I mean, they've been gone for and now. Any other memories that you want to share, like things like that, going to the zoo, going to the
zoo, going to Fisherman's Wharf to see. We used to go to Fisherman's Wharf and Pier 39 to see the Christmas tree lighting every year. A lot of trips to the zoo.
Did it ever get old?
It didn't. It really didn't, and it still doesn't, to be honest. I was before we started recording, I was walking Lake Merced the other day, and I passed by it all the time. And I had just enough time in the middle of my day that I thought I could bust out a quick walk of the whole lake, and it happened to be really sunny and beautiful out. And as I was walking, I thought, like, this really doesn't get old. I've been around this lake dozens and dozens and dozens of times on a bike, running, walking, my whole life. It was no less enjoyable to me, and I was no less grateful then than I ever have been, which was a really nice experience.
And something you can't put a price tag on. I'm sorry. Like,
I don't know.
That's nice.
this happens everywhere, all over the city. If I'm paying attention, at least, if I'm not just like breezing from A to B, I have not gotten tired of the city whatsoever. I don't see it happening. I'm not surprised it hasn't happened yet, but all the things that I used to do growing up, I have a new respect for now because I pay more attention to it.
A new appreciation.
Yeah, it really was. The city has been like my playground my whole life, and it wasn't until I went to UC Santa Cruz for college, so it wasn't far. But when I would bring friends back for the weekend to like explore and take them to like the Palace of Fine Arts, or I would take them to all the places that I grew up like visiting as if it was my normal life.
Right.
But to see the way that other people's appreciation for it and experience of it was different because it just wasn't accessible.
Going back perhaps to your high school days,
Yeah.
When do you think you started appreciating it?
Not until...
Or starting to feel like this is really home and it's a special place.
I didn't really get the feeling of like, this is special and this is a special place until, like I said, I would come back from college and I would experience it through other people.
And perhaps the going away.
Yeah.
Like, even
and I
though it's
only
not
went
far,
like an hour and a half
not
south
far,
from
but,
yeah.
Or it's vicariously through your friends.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then that's really where I just really started to appreciate its beauty. I took it for granted without realizing that it was something that was uniquely special. And not an experience that everybody has.
Right.
And that appreciation continues to grow, sincerely. I feel that more and more the older I get. I haven't gotten tired of it.
That was Matt Sterling. On the next Storied San Francisco, hear the rest of Matt's story, including how he became a bartender and pub quiz MC. Part 2 drops Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts. Music for the podcast was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Original photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 4th season, we have more than 160 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can, please rate and review our show so we can reach even more folks. We love email. Drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay healthy, keep dreaming, and we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.